this app report card that you have set up for SEC575 now?
So I've been hearing questions from a lot of students, and we talk about a lot of different ways to test Android and iOS apps, but there's really no consistency. Sometimes people do some steps, sometimes people do other steps, and I wanted to try to have a way where we could identify all the things that you should be evaluating for applications if you're doing a vulnerability assessment or if you're working with developers and want to give them advice on how better to secure the applications that they're developing.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of students in SEC575 tell me that their organization actually doesn't do a lot of application assessment in advance of those applications being put on the mobile devices.
Yeah, I think that's very common, especially if you look at, just as a representative sample, the amount of iOS or the amount of Android apps that are out there and the number of vulnerabilities that exist in those apps. A lot of them very clearly have not gone through any kind of security scrutiny.
Right. Do you want to sort of walk me through a little bit of the spreadsheet?
Yeah, so what I did was I pulled out a bunch of items that we talk about in the mobile security class, and I tried to identify and give each of them a number of points. I figured that this would be easy for people to understand and for high-level management to be able to grok what the letter grade is, because we've all experienced that kind of a letter grade. So here, in the material that I'm working on, I decided to evaluate the Uvu application. My daughter uses Uvu to talk to her friends. I didn't know anything about it, so I just chose it as a good target application. So I started looking at some of the things that I, as an iOS developer or me as a pen tester, would be looking for in an application. Things like, does it use ASLR, address space layout randomization features? Does it use stack protection? Does it detect jailbroken environments? Does it suppress sensitive logging? Those kinds of things are all kind of smaller point value issues, because while they're important from a security perspective, they require some other vector to be able to exploit the lack of a security feature. But things like, does it encrypt sensitive network traffic? Does it protect network authentication credentials? Does it validate TLS certificates? Those are the type of things that I think are much more likely to be exploited, so they get a much higher point value. And then I went down the list here and I identified all these different issues, and then, with a little bit of flexibility for how we're scoring it, like any teacher would grading a paper, I gave them points for different things they did. Now, in this example for Uvu, they are not encrypting their network traffic. Uvu does not encrypt chat. It does not encrypt video. It does use TLS for authentication, but that authentication challenge response mechanism could be susceptible to a number of different attacks. I'm not confident in the security of how that's implemented. They did some good things. They do validate TLS certificates. When the TLS certificate is bad, like, for example, an EtherCat man-in-the-middle attack, the users get an error and they can't bypass it. So these are all good things that they do, but there's a lot of things that they're not doing too. For example, the app is, like many iOS apps, susceptible to manipulation using Cydia substrate and the script or the script utility. They're not checking for any of those types of things, so they lost a lot of points there. Like any teacher, I gave them some extra credit opportunities as well. I think Swift apps have a lot of security benefits not available in Objective-C, but Uvu's written Objective-C, so they don't get the 5 points for the Swift writing. And they don't do all of their traffic TLS encrypted, so they didn't get the 10 extra bonus points for that. So overall, Uvu got a C-. They're doing some things right. They do actually disclose on their website that they do not encrypt chat and video content, and they say they don't because of performance reasons. So at least they disclose that. I don't know if many people are aware of that, but at least they disclose it, so I didn't give them a 0 in that category. But overall, still a lot of room for improvement in what's going on with Uvu specifically.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to consolidate all of these thoughts into a checklist of sorts, but also a mechanism to easily grade. And there's still a little bit of art in it, where the whoever's performing the assessment needs to have an understanding of what the risk is for this particular application. But I think that it's a really great mechanism that ties together a lot of the things that you've already built into SEC 575.
Well, I hope it'll be useful, and what I'm working on now is material to help back up all these things. So, for example, um, does the app detect attached debuggers? Does the app detect manipulated classes and methods? In the course material, I'm writing about two things there. How do we as pen testers figure out if the application meets that requirement or not? And then if it doesn't meet that requirement, what can the pen tester tell their developers on the back end or offer advice to the developing company on how to actually fix that issue? I'm going to go back to video for a second here just to switch this out. And I wanted to show you what I'm actually doing inside the course material as well. So this is some material that I was just working on. And so, this little gray box area here, this is what I did as a developer. I would use GDB. I would attach to the uvu application using GDB and then the uvu binary on a jailbroken iOS device, and then I would run it. And I would watch what uvu does. Does uvu exit with an error? Does it exit without an error? Does it send some kind of different network traffic that might indicate that it's still running, but it detected somebody using it in a debugger to be able to kind of characterize that event? uvu is not doing any of those things. So we can not give uvu those points in the report card because it's not doing debug detection. But here in the background on the left, I also provide some code. Now, a lot of people that take the class don't read code, and I won't expect them to read code, but this is something that they can share with their developers so that the developer can see, oh, this is what I need to do to be able to get that kind of functionality in my own application. Another example here, how do we do runtime modification detection? And this is just an example here where we can use script, the SciCrypt utility, to be able to manipulate an application, but a developer could take that into consideration. And inside their application, they could detect, has somebody manipulated my application? I couldn't find any code that would actually do this, so I wrote up this quick example, and again, just something else that we could use as pen testers to be able to share back with our customer to be able to say, you failed this test, but I'm not just going to leave you high and dry. Here's exactly what you can do to fix that.
I think that's really important, and I know that SEC 575 is really a class for pen testers, but we have to provide something back to the developers to help them to defend against these particular flaws. So this is great. Like you said, it really isn't out there right now, so this is exciting to have this included in the course content.
Thanks, Ed. And what I'm going to be working on in the future is taking that same report card and then modifying it so that these type of steps, the recommendations, the testing steps, will all be part of it. And I'm hoping that at some point, with feedback from people in the pen testing community on how scoring is, that I missed some tests, that sort of thing, maybe we can make it a consistent scoring mechanism that will be recognized and something that developers can work towards when they're creating their applications as well. So I'm still working on this, but I'm going to post it on willhackforsushi.com probably in the next week or so, just to solicit some feedback and to get some ideas for other folks. And then I'd love to hear feedback from people on what they think, or what works and what doesn't work, or is there stuff that could make it better? That would be terrific.
Yeah, that's great. When do you think that it'll release into 575? What's your objective for that?
So with this update material that I'm working on now, it will debut in Orlando, which I think is the second week in April, or it's in the middle of April somewhere. Mm-hmm. So that'll be the first time that material runs there.
Very cool. Yeah, it's hard to keep up with all the changes that are going on in the mobile development and mobile application pen testing and mobile platform pen testing, for that matter, space. It's a challenge to keep abreast of all of it.
Yeah, it's hard to stay on top of everything that's going on, and every new article I read, for me, I read the article and then that turns into 4 hours of additional research trying to figure out, well, where else can I take this kind of an issue? But I'm hoping that people will be able to use videos like this one, use some public resources to cut out on some of that time investment, but still get up to speed on the stuff that's happening in mobile that's interesting pretty quickly.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm looking forward to it. So thanks for giving me the update on it, and I hope folks out there appreciate it as well.
Awesome. Thanks for putting it together, Chris. Talk to you soon.
Sure. Bye.